In today's session, we will look into sitecore 10 containers. So, sitecore has started introducing containers from some time, and today we will see sitecore 10 containers. And in this session, we will see why containers, what are the prerequisites, deploying containers with custom image, and deploying into how to deploy your code into a running containers. So first, why containers? And basically, if you have a development environment, the traditional approach is either you on your local machine you install everything, all the required softwares and all the required site code related topologies, and you can then start your development. You put your source code, and if you have your team members, they have to download it, set up the environment. That is how it happens traditionally. And the other option is you can put into the VMs, and in the VMs you can install and you can upload the VMs for your teammates so that they can download it. Now the disadvantage of having this VM is, it is very consuming resource consuming. Say you have this host operating system. On top of that, you have hypervisor, guest operation system, your IAS application or whatever it is, and the VM. So if and this is a very high resource consuming. In order to avoid that, we have an option called containers. So as we saw in the previous slide, like why we need these containers. So by using these containers, we can completely avoid the VMs, and we can have just a container. This container consists of things which are just required. We don't need unnecessary things in a container. The bare minimum requirements will be present in the container to run your applications. In that way, you have the option to save a lot of resources like computing, your hardware, software, everything. It will be optimized, and these are licensed. For example, if you need some software to run your application, you can get the required container or liquid image from Microsoft. So all these images will be stored in a registry, public registry, wherein you can download. So you download it, and on one machine you can set up the environment in the form of containers, and you just upload the containers whatever you have developed or assembled to a registry, wherein your team members can just download it and they can start using it. In that way, you are saving a lot of time and energy. So this is one of the advantage. And if somebody uh, upgrades or makes some changes in the container, he can again upload that to the registry. The rest of the team members can take it. So this is where how it works, and it is lightweight. So let us see the difference between the VM and a container. So this is a traditional way. So as we discussed previously, we have host operating system, hypervisor, and guest operating system application for VM. In that way, we can have multiple VMs. But once you come, once you start looking into containers, you have this host operating system, Docker daemon. There is a daemon, and on top of that you have containers. So you can have multiple containers, and they are very lightweight. Now let us see what is a container. what does a container contain, to be precise. So for you know uh, for an example purpose, we will take this. You have an application or website, and in order to run that, you need configuration files, you need SDKs, you need some minimum operating systems, and you might need a lot of other supporting files. So this is how it looks like. So this is the main heart of it. And in order to run your application, you have the configuration files as one image, and maybe if you have SDK or as another image. In this way, you make a container, you prepare a container as the per the requirements of the project, and you host it. You can host it in a Docker. So this is how a container looks. And now let us see what does how does a sitecore container looks. And I have taken this from the URL. This is from the sitecore. So if you see, you have different containers here. One is XP plus SPE and SXA, so on. Let us take an example of XP. So in XP, you have two images, and what is it? In one way, this is called layered concepts. So you can say this is two layers. The layer one is Windows Server Core, and another is Sitecore XP. In order to run this Sitecore XP, you need something from the Windows Server Core. So these two will form a container, and this container will be used as a whole as an application. In the same way, you can have multiple containers. For example, this has SPE also, and this have SXA. So in this way, each layer will have its own uh, you know uh, uh, image. And the other advantage is, if I download an image, this image can be reused across different containers. For example, in this diagram, you can see three containers, and XP is used in all the three of them. So here we have only one version of XP, only one image of XP which is being used across. So this is the advantage. And for example, this Windows Core, this you can download from Windows registry, and this Sitecore XP, this you can download from the Sitecore registry. That is the advantage. Now, in order to have this, in order to port this in your local machine, you have to have certain prerequisites, that are both software and hardware and networking. For software, you have to have, for on your local machine, Windows 10, and the build is 1809 or later, and a desktop for the Windows. So this you can download it for here. And hardware requirements is, you can say it should be 16 GB RAM minimum, SSD hard disk for faster access, and Hyper-V activated. So these are the hardware requirements. And networking requirements are, these ports should be free. And we had to remember that this port 443 is generally used by IIS server for HTTPS. So in this case, before we start our deployment of containers or download of the containers, to make it up and running, we have to stop the IIS server. So these are the prerequisites for the containers to work on your local machine. So now let us check the prerequisites. So first we have to, one of the prerequisites is, you have to have the Docker installed on your machine for Windows. So I can download it for this, which I have already downloaded and I have installed. And then Hyper-V, whether Hyper-V has been active or not. So I have got to control panels, Windows features turn on and off, and I have activated this Hyper-V. And next requirement is, once you download the Docker, we have to make sure that it is on Windows Docker. So for that, I go to the Docker, which is down in the ribbon, and I have to make sure that this is on. I have to see switch to Linux control containers is on. So otherwise, if you see switch to Windows containers, then you have to click it, and it has to be in the Windows in the Windows form. And another couple of other requirements on the Docker, which we have to make sure is running. I go to here, then in the Docker engine, by default you don't have this. So I have added this as part of the requirements. And another thing is, make sure that this is turned off, otherwise you will have some issues while running the Dockers. This is from the Docker side. And also you have to make sure that SDK .NET SDK 4.8 is installed on your local machines. So these are the prerequisites, and now let us see what are required. So another requirement is the IIS should be stopped. So I go to PowerShell and I will stop the IIS server. So here I am stopping it. Now the IIS server is stopped. Now we are good from that prerequisites perspective. Now we have to see from where and how we can have the custom images, how can we customize the containers. In order to do that, we have a good news. Sitecore has uh, already uploaded a basic framework in the GitHub. So you go to this, and you can download it from these examples. You can download it from the Docker, which is open for everyone, which is open to the public. Once you download it, all the prerequisites, the folder structure, the images that are required for you, so everything is in place. It was given by Sitecore. The only thing we have to do is we have to download it. The prerequisites should be good, and we have to run certain commands to make sure the images are downloaded, the compiled, and then they are added. Now if I go to Docker, if I open Docker here, uh, there are, if you see images, there are no containers, there are no images. So once I download everything, the images, and you can see images here, and you can see also containers here. So I have downloaded this Docker examples. If you see these Docker examples in my local machine, and I have opened it in Visual Studio Code. So this Visual Studio Code you need to download. And other requirement for this example is you have to have Visual Studio 2019 edition in order to deploy something to the containers, because that is supported for sitecore 10. And also you can see the containers. Once containers are downloaded, you can see them in Visual Studio 2019. So we are good with the prerequisites, and now we will go to the structure and we will download the images. Now let us understand the folder structure of these custom images. So uh, you have VS. This basically contains the one related to Visual Studio, Docker. So in this Docker folder, you have build, data, and deploy. A build is basically these are the images which will be built, and under each one of them you will have a minimum of one Docker file. So you have one Docker file here, CM. In CM you need some transformation, so you have transformations file as well as a Docker file. So for each of these images you will have at least one Docker file. This Docker file we will go into the Docker file in one of these as an example and check what it contains and what is the importance of that. And this is data. So basically this is where the data will be stored. If you go to SQL Server, once SQL Server is up and running, you can see all the images or all the MDF and LDF files here. And next folder is deploy. This is very important. So this is like a voluming of the folder, volume in the sense like it is a mounted folder. Here in the mounted folder you can have uh, anything put into this folder will be copied to the container. So if I want to publish my solution here, then I publish my solution here and it will be copied to the container, and that container will then be copied to container, and that container get the latest build. And other thing here is okay, deploy, and you have traffic. So right now this traffic works as a reverse proxy, in the sense like this is a piece of thing that communicates between the containers and that communicates between the browser and the container. So this is responsible. And another is clean. Basically this cleans up everything, everything if required. So the data or whatever it is. And the next important thing is this Docker ignore. These files should be ignored. That's what it is saying. It should not be uploaded to repository. And this env file, this env file forms the basis of all the images, meaning for example this solution base image, this base image will be taken from Microsoft registry. That's what it is saying. And this variable solution base image will be used across the Docker file and Docker compose. The same way you have solution build image, the versions, and what are the host names, what are the other registries versions, everything will be there. In order to populate that, we have to run this init.ps file. So basically this init.ps file contains the passwords. You can change the password here, admin password, sitecore password, the directories, what are the other tools, and what is required for the certificates, and the variables for the host name, everything. So first let me run this in 4, and I have to give the path of the license. License path of the file. So this is my file, this is a part of that file which I will give, and I will run it. So it runs and it populates all the values to the env file. If you see, it is generating certificates and it is writing into the host files, generating the certificates and everything. So if I go to env file here, Now if you see, passwords are, you know, are populated here, the certificates and everything. This is the compressed license file, and everything is done here. And the it will and the host entries will be written also. So if I go here, drivers, etc, host, if I open this, if you see these entries, all these entries, docker example entries are uh, are written. And if you see, if you go here, you can see the what are the names that has to be given. So yeah, these host entries and everything is done. So now let us see what does a docker compose file. This is the basic file, this is for the base image, and this is for the customization image. So let us see here and check what does this contain. So first thing is, you it is saying the image, registry, compose, the compose project name and version. So all this you will be getting from the env file. Okay, now if you observe all these values, for example, this compose project name, this is coming from the environment. Yeah, you will see here this environment variable. So in this way, all the environment variables are used in these compose files. And let us see another example, base image. So this base image, let us see, or build image, let us see this. What is this base image? I go to the environment file, I will find, yeah, so this is the base image. And what it says is we have to download the base image from the Microsoft registry. So this is what it is saying. Another thing to look into it is, okay, the context. So this context says which docker file you have to consider for this. So this dot means you have to consider the docker file which is present at the same level. So we have to consider this docker file. And likewise, if you see, if you go somewhere, you can say, yeah, context. For example, the context is docker build solar init and docker build id. So docker x connect. So what it is saying is you have to take this context. That means you have to consider the docker file which are present in build in cm server. This docker file has to be considered, and for cd this docker file has to be considered. All this is regarding the context. So basically we are taking this and these arguments, and we are passing it to the docker file. So I go to the docker file. If you see here, these are the arguments, declaration of arguments, and these values we are getting from the compose override and finally into the env file. And here let us go quickly to this docker file. So for example, this is escape character. Instead of backslash, it is saying we will use this. And these are the declaration of the arguments, and this is the pref work. The pref work, it is saying what has to be done. For example, copy these NuGet config. For example, you have NuGet config files, package props, directly build targets, all of them should be copied. And you have started actually build initiation here. And here we are saying, like, the shell instruction should be switched to the default shell to PowerShell from cmd. And we are creating a work directory. And we are doing the NuGet restoration here. We are copying the source code, and here we are building the solution, and finally we are copying the artifacts. So this is at the high level of the docker file. And another important thing which we can see in the Docker file is this depends on. Depends on means this is one of the prerequisites. For example, in order to bring up this CM server, this solution image should be up, and depends on, for example, in here also you have this solution file, and in some cases you will see that depends on, yeah. So for example, for this particular horizon image, the condition is this id should be start in the start state. CM should be in the start state, and there is something called volume. Let me, yeah. So this volume is another important thing. So this volume says like deploy path from website to deploy. So what it is saying is, so the path and deploy and website, deploy and website. So whatever you once the containers are up and running, whatever you place here will be copied to the C deploy directory of the container. That's what it is saying. And other thing is, yeah, so these are the prerequisites, the date, the folder structure and everything. Now let us pull the now let us pull the images and build the containers. In order to do that is a single command like docker compose up -d. So basically what it does is it downloads all the required images, and it will pull the images, and it will put it in the containers. All this, there is no need to do anything from us, it will be done itself. We have the required script, we have the required infrastructure, we have all the prerequisites. So it will be downloaded, and it will be up and running once it is done. So we will be back. It will take some time, it will take minimum half an hour to 45 minutes, and that again depends on the bandwidth. So we will be back after the everything is downloaded. Now all the containers have been downloaded, and we will see whether everything is working fine or not. So first let us check the traffic. So look, if I go here, the traffic is working. That means the reverse proxy is working, and also the CM server, this is also working. Now the other thing is we have to check how we can publish something into a running container, and also at the same time uh, the entry point, what are entry points and what is a volume. So let us take an example of a volume. Now what I will do is I will make some changes in the what do you call ASX file, and I will publish, and we will check whether it is working or not. So I have opened it, and I'll put something here. Okay, now I will publish it. So if you see, the path of this publishing is docker develop and website. So I will publish it. So it should reflect here in the docker's deploy website. So now, yeah, you can see this, it has been published here, and as we mentioned, this is a mount folder, and at the same time this is um, a volumed folder. We should be able to see the values here. So let me refresh it. Okay, now I can see whatever I done. So whatever I put this in this folder, that would be copied to initpub. So let us uh, take another example. In this example, what we will do is we will create a text file, notepad. So what I will do is for testing for volume. So what I will just test save as volume. So I'm saving in the same folder. So I go here and it is reflecting here, and at the same time it should reflect in the container as well. So there are different ways to check that. First thing is, first of all, once everything is done, how can we check everything is up and running, the health of the containers? So we have there are three different ways. One, you can do it from the PowerShell. So what I will do, Docker. So Docker. Let me see. Here you can see the health of the containers, and also it is up. The other option is I can go to desktop and get this. So you have the containers, you see the containers here, which have been up and running, and okay, this is the solar and this is expected, but it is working. And images, what are the images that have been downloaded? Everything is here. Now if you remember, we have copied this text file here, so it should be reflecting in the container. So the third way of looking into container is through Visual Studio. So this is also, the thing is, view other windows, containers. So I can go through here and I can see the text file. So this has been volumed. So whatever is present in this website folder of deploy, that will be reflecting it here. Once it reflects here, it should reflect at other places. So it is present here. Now it should be in www root as well. So init www root, yeah, this is the file which we have uploaded, testing for volume. If you see the same thing, sorry, oh no, this one, testing for volume, it has been copied as expected. Now let us check some other things. Like, as we discussed it previously, we have this Visual SQL Server, and if you discuss here, the port is 14330. I put it here. Now what is the password? This is the same password which was present as part of the environment file. So let's go to the environment file. I will minimize this and env file, and let us see sitecore admin password SQL. So okay, this is the password, and let us see if it works. I'm pasting it here, connect. Now it got connected and you can see all the databases. So in this way you can see the databases here, and when I go back here, so if I go to Docker and data and SQL server, you have all the LDF and MDF files which are same as that are present in this server. So SQL server, let it load, and data. So these are the same files which are present on the volume folders. So this is how it works. Now the other important factor is what are entry points. So let us go to CM server and let us go to tools. You see this entry point. This is very important here. So this entry point is something like once a container gets loaded, this is the first thing that starts executing. So entry points, IIS server. So in this IIS server, this script will be executed. So let us go to this. This is a script which says, these are the paths. Whatever is the C deploy, you have to copy it in Windows. And there might be a question like, you can directly copy into www root, but there are certain limitations in the uh, Windows the Windows Docker. So as per that requirements, it should be either blank or doesn't exist. But so because of that limitations, we copy into deploy, and from the deploy, this script is responsible for copying, and this script is calling watch directory. So scripts watch directory. So this directory is responsible continuously, monitoring it and copying it to www root folder. Now let us see how SCM as per the as per the as per the Docker Compose works. So as per the Docker Compose, we have these images as part of the CM server. So let us check how it looks in a CM server. So what I will do is I will say paste, and now let us go to sitecore, and it is the password is same. And now if you see, you have media library, you and you have PowerShell related these two. So if you go here, that is related to SXA, and we will check how this SXA works. And you see horizon, and somewhere here it should be here. Yeah, if you see, the horizon is here, and let me go to content editor. Once I go to content editor and I right click insert, so this tenant, that means the SXA is also installed. So as per uh, our requirements, whatever we have configured as part of the CM container, all the images are present. So now the next thing is how we can debug. So let us go to Visual Studio, and there are two ways to debug it. First thing is, I'm in CM server, I click on this, and W3 attach. Now it is attached. And the other way, let us go to the other way, is debug attached to process. Here it should be Docker for Windows. Find, we should get, okay. Now CM server, okay. I got the CM server on W3P attach. So these are the two ways which you can attach a debugger. So in this session we have achieved everything what we wanted. So why containers, prerequisites, and deploying to running containers, and also how to debug. So these are the things which I wanted to share with you, and thank you.